This is True Colors of Cybersecurity. Powered by CISO Share in Southern California to be enjoyed globally, we discuss the unspoken truth in the cybersecurity industry. Check out our other episodes at cisoshare.com/cyber-security-podcast.
Welcome back to True Colors of Cybersecurity. My name is Celine and I'm joined here again by Mike Gentili, as well as Adam Couch and Xander Hamman. On this episode, we're opening up a facet of the human element of cybersecurity to talk specifically about veterans in the industry. Before we let Adam and Xander take it away, Mike, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about why hiring veterans is so important to CISO Share?
From a veteran perspective, what makes veterans spectacular in my estimation is really a couple of things. One is that they are used to learning highly technical, not just technical in computers, but technical complex things that they might not have familiarity in quickly. So they're used to being thrown into something and figuring that out in a really quick way. The other thing that kind of ties into that is that everything in the military is process driven. And really that's the only effective way to really do security is to really start at the process and then look at how to do things, so that they're used to getting into a process and actually following or learning steps with it. The third thing is that some of the most successes that we've had in at least in my career from a security perspective have been accomplished via small, compact teams. Sometimes maybe they're 15, 20, 30, 40 people, but they're still in the terms of an organization are pretty compact and can really accomplish a lot. And that's another thing that's, I think, really fluid and very common in military is how you work in different teams as well as subsets of teams in order to accomplish complex things.
Great. Do you guys want to share more about what you do in your current positions? Xander, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. So currently, I've been stepping up as the interim chief information security officer at my bank. We're a public bank, commercial bank, about $15 billion in assets under management, growing really rapidly, doing a lot of M&A. Primarily responsible for data privacy. A lot of that goes in hand with M&A activity, making sure due diligence is performed and making sure sensitive information is protected, particularly privacy information and personally identifiable information, that kind of thing. So I'm also currently in charge of our data governance initiative, which is a colossal undertaking. That's I don't want to say cutting edge kind of implementation, but it's definitely forward thinking. Takes a lot of complex thought and analytical architecture in order to put that program together. So that's a huge thing I'm doing by myself, which is very difficult to do. And I'm happy to expand on that too. I'm also currently engaging in a security architecture assessment for my firm with a high profile consulting company that knows what they're doing. I'm doing that to get ready for the California Consumer Privacy Act, which goes hand in hand with my privacy program and my governance program. So that's kind of what I really got going on these days. Plus I have a disaster recovery test coming up at the end of the month to top it all off. So that's a whole bunch of stuff. Adam?
Yeah, so as VP of services at CISO Share, I've been working with our CEO for about 5 years, and this is actually technically the third or fourth business we've worked together in. And my day-to-day is really around managing a team of about 30 to 40 consultants in various skill levels and disciplines. So everything from security analysis, incident risk, vulnerability management, governance, security architecture, engineering, penetration tests, you name it. So the scope of my job is to ensure that the services teams and management professional services are firing on all cylinders, as well as interfacing with the external entities, whether that's partners, service providers, sales, and ensuring that the clients are getting what they need from a value add standpoint, identifying new opportunities, understanding trends in the market, and really identifying the needs and kind of projecting forward what we're gonna do to help mature security programs for our clients. And that kind of sums it up.
So you guys are pretty well established in your positions. How did you guys actually end up in the cybersecurity discipline, and how did you get to where you guys are today?
I'll go ahead and start if you want, Adam. So yeah, I had a really unique transition experience from the military. I was in the United States Marine Corps as an infantry combat leader. A lot of us, when we're in the military, particularly in my role and function, didn't have a lot. We thought we didn't have a lot to offer the civilian sector once we got out besides law enforcement. A lot of people started getting into like criminal justice if they could, or becoming a cop or a highway patrolman or something to that effect. Some of us thought leadership was an intangible quality that we could definitely use sometime in business. So I was one of those people. When I got out, I went and got my MBA with the GI Bill. That's a master's in business for some of you grunts out there. And that really helped me leverage a lot of what the civilian sector had to offer. It broke down a lot of the terms I was familiar with hearing in the industry or on television, but was not really intimately aware of. I then moved into kind of operations management, project management. I also worked as a financial technology business analyst. That was really exciting stuff. But none of it really captivated me or caught my attention and really made me passionate about what I was doing. Moved down to Southern California and found myself wanting to get back into the fight, is what we call it in the military, right? And meaning that I wanted to get back into the fight. I wanted to start doing something, getting back into something. I couldn't be back in special forces anymore or do anything crazy like that, but I could maybe get back into intelligence. So I worked my angle on that effect. Took myself over to the East Coast and hated it on the East Coast and knew that I still wanted to do this kind of work, but I wanted to work myself back to the West Coast where I was happier. So as I do that, I realized that cybersecurity was really the trend and the hot topic, and what in intelligence community was all on the West Coast related was cyber, and all on the East Coast was all human intelligence and counterintelligence and traditional, all open source intelligence gathering and that kind of thing. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm really not the best IT person, but that's okay. I'm sure Adam can attest to my IT skills, but that's okay because I've got business acumen and I've got project management skills, which came directly from experience in managing troops in combat.
So do you want to talk maybe a little bit about the other experiences you had? Like maybe if you don't mind, like more personally, there's some things that led you to, you bounced around in different things, right? And there's a lot of things that veterans don't understand about getting out of the military, where it's a lot of trial and error, and you went through that and you had successes, but the situations kept morphing and you took sometimes 2 steps back or a step backward to go 2 steps forward. Right. Yeah. So that might be a little bit helpful.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, really, and this is kind of the value I think of offering for me to be here today, is to talk about my transition experience and how difficult that was for me. And yet still I came out successful. And today I'm probably at the height of my career, and I couldn't be happier about that. So yeah, what Adam, to that vein, getting out, as I mentioned, I was a combat operations leader, and that's really what I identified with. Separating and coming to the civilian sector, I didn't have a purpose. I no longer had troops to lead. I no longer had an objective to obtain other than an education to complete, and then find myself married and, kind of doing quote unquote the American thing. So I found myself struggling for an identity, even though I knew exactly who I was and I'd already survived combat twice, which was a very difficult paradigm to deal with, to be quite frank. Very humbling experience. And mind you, I was sober this entire time too, which was not any more difficult than it probably is for anyone else, but it helped. And that's why my message here is to tell you guys too, if you're transitioning or you did transition, you're having a tough time, my number one piece of advice is to put down the bottle, even if you don't have a problem. Just put that bottle down for a little while and get your life together, prioritize your objectives, and move on and move forward. Yeah, so I did a lot of adapting and overcoming and improvising. I had to work for a company that wound up cooking the books. My integrity from the military told me that's everything I stand against, so I had to walk away from a pretty high-profile job and some good salary. Found myself unemployed, almost going homeless, activating every resource I could possibly find that I could think of through the VA, through third parties, through all kinds of volunteer organization, scraped by, made it, latched on to what I could find for work wise, and scrambled and just took chances and continued taking risks and job interviews and more and more and more. And again, I took that job out on the East Coast as an intelligence analyst. And that's really when things started taking shape and I started to continue persevering. So I think, for me, I went through a lot of hard times, and I lived in a lot of different cities and different places, had some very different leadership and different experiences. And a lot of people really didn't give a damn that I was a veteran, and said that they did and hired me because they, like to Mike's point, that they did care about me being a veteran, but they really didn't. And it was very evident when I was working through those situations. And very lonely experience too, to be honest.
For sure.
Very lonely.
Yeah, because when you get out, like nobody there's a lot of programs out there, but they only take you so far, right?
Yeah.
And so they're meant to lead a horse to water, but either they can't drink or
Yeah. And sometimes that horse has to push the person taking him to the water too.
Exactly.
I mean, really.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a struggle.
So I guess, segueing into, your experience is basically the opposite of mine. Because I was really fortunate to go into the military during the times were just different, bottom line. So I went into the military in 2000, summer of 2000. So Clinton was still in office, it was pre 9/11. And I was also 17. So I had a unique set of circumstances where I went in during that time. It was peace and I was young, and 9/11 happened actually right after my first year of being in the Marine Corps. I also went into the intelligence field, which had its own set of circumstances and skills that comes with it. So the circumstances are I was afforded a lot of opportunity to learn like technical systems, information assurance, the intelligence cycle, all these different things that a lot of veterans actually don't get the opportunity to even know what they are. They don't even know that they're available because of whatever, right? They had a bad ASVAB score. They thought intelligence is geeky. They just want to fire a gun, whatever. But so I got lucky in that regard where my parents actually wanted to make sure that I went into a good job field. I was young. 9/11 happened. I got to do, a combat deployment to, Iraq. And during that, the government was pumping tons of money into information systems and training. So I gained all of that in like a real quick hurry, because everybody was doing everything so fast, right? And I got out of the Marine Corps after 5 years, and there was tons of opportunity for growth because the economy was going bonkers. Government was spending money, just lighting money on fire, essentially, to hire people like myself that had, actual experience in combat doing intelligence. And that led to a whole other, series of things that happened where I got into UAV, like predator mission planning and like imagery analysis and radar configurations. And then I moved into, C2 systems, or command and control system instruction and administration, which is where I learned a lot of the foundational elements for like what we do now in cybersecurity, like networking, operating systems, database and application administration. All that stuff was learned like through the government. And during that whole time, I was going to school, and it wasn't until I was in grad school taking an information systems class that I thought I should be in consulting. So I ended up applying for a job with, Mike Gentili's one of his last companies, and that's how I ended up here today. So been here ever since.
And how about you, Xander?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll talk about my entry into CISO share, because that was pretty on the other side of the fence there. Kind of interviewing for that job. I remember that day really well. And as I mentioned earlier, it was about taking risks and persevering and kind of expanding your comfort zone as much as you possibly can as a veteran, right? Because you try to make something out of your life that you're capable of doing and contributing and being something that's adding value to the world and has a purpose, but you just got to find it. So I was trying to find my spot, and I took a shot. They took a shot on me, and I took a shot on them. It went really, really well. I adapted to the situation, was very clear about what I did not understand. Once I realized what I did not understand, and took it from there and just dug right into the trenches, got right into the NIST framework, got right into the ISO framework, and read that thing cover to cover. And really that was all it took, and it took Mike's kind of guidance on architecture and how to actually architect programs itself, and other kind of guidance from other key people to really, show me the way. But for me, it was kind of like, as I mentioned, it's cybersecurity gladiator school for me.
So one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle to understand is, well, a lot of veterans, is that with cybersecurity, there's fundamentals and that are relatable back to the Marine Corps, or not the Marine Corps, but the military in general. So, we try to start with identifying the person and their skills, and even if they don't have the actual cybersecurity skills, there's a few things that the military does really well. One is try to prepare for conflict, and the other is understanding how you're going to react to
The
conflict,
unknown.
right?
Yeah.
Which in cybersecurity, we call that risk management and incident management. Maybe can you talk a little bit about like how your experience as a infantryman, you understand risk in kinetic war,
Mm-hmm.
and incident management, which is, again, like
Ethereal.
yeah, maybe go into that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's a great topic because, cybersecurity is really esoteric to the outsider. It sounds all kinds of crazy and cool, and it sounds like it's Star Wars, and it kind of looks like it is when you see real-time graphics and stuff. So it makes you think like it's something you could never get into or really be a part of, but that's not true. And as an advantage as a veteran, you have the lingo, the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. You have all kinds of perimeter boundaries. It just makes sense. Access control, like this is what we do. We're security operators. So for me, it was just taking it from a three-dimensional perspective to the more ethereal realm, where I had to just kind of put the blueprint in my mind and just adapt to the lingo to this new form of combat, I guess, because that's really what it is, right? I mean, there's
Right.
people attacking you and you're defending yourself, and maybe you're not at like full-blown war or declared war or anything, and there are no rules of engagement. People are just going for it. So yeah, it's very, very, very similar. I just took the same lingo, same approach, risk management in particular, and having to negotiate and accept risk. And ultimately, that's, I'm a different kind of guy. I take a hell of a lot of risk, which is why I'm alive today. But it's, it gets exponential reward too.
Yeah, and like the biggest thing that I try to do is use analogies that go back to the time of the service, because there's no better way to like connect to something and just make it like a little bit more personal, or something that somebody's already gone through, right? So I know at least in the Marine Corps we have ORM, or operational risk management. Right?
Sure.
And what's always
Sure.
the,
Yeah.
the Friday saying, right? Is
Right.
always, we always take it to a weird level. While that's like the kind of the funny version, that those things are said and they hit home with the guys. But in an operational sense, they talk about operational risk management is, we have to know when you get in a Humvee, like you're going down the road, what are the threats and what are the, what's the likelihood that something's going to happen, and then that's all risks. That's understanding where you can get hit, how you can get hit, and so those are the ways like we connect.
Right, and all your rehearsals to prepare against the ambush, to counteract all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it's really because business. At the end of the day, business pushes money around, right? And that's what moves business again in like. So that's just the primary motivator. So your cybersecurity, you're in combat the whole time you're in business. The key feature or the key function of your responsibility as a security leader is to make sure the business can continue to operate efficiently and fluidly and smoothly and effectively while you're providing effective security, but not overburdening the business so much so that you can't even be in the fight,
Right.
So that's the kind of the conundrum that I think a lot of, now that I have been in the seat for quite a while now as a security leader, seeing that decision making and taking that risk acceptance, because there's so much risk that's thrown at you every day. There's all these vulnerabilities popping up. There's 0 days. There's potential incidents. There's intrusion alerts. It just doesn't stop. So what you have to do is trust your instinct, follow up, verify whatever you can do, set up your dashboards, be an executive, and manage your risk as much as you can, knowing that these things are going to happen. If you take every single thing and you're going to get paralyzed, the whole business will shut down. It's not going to work like that.
Yep. Yeah. So what do you think, like, looking back at your position in the Marine Corps and what you do now, like what are some things that you've taken with you like just fundamental things.
Sure.
Didn't even have to be security things.
Yeah, we have a saying in the Marine Corps that JJ did tie buckle, right?
Yep.
The
14 leadership
traits. So a lot of those things, justice, determination, discipline, all those kind of things, you just that came right with me, right? Other things, the leadership characteristics, right? Know yourself and know your strengths and weaknesses.
Self-improvement.
Seek self-improvement, right? Know your Marines and all that kind of stuff. So that all came with me. So with my staff now, I know them all obviously on a first name basis, but they feel comfortable coming to me, but they still know that, look, I cracked the whip. I'm firm but fair. I'm still that leader that I was then, a little bit more loose now because standards aren't the same and there's not as much of a...
Because there's not a bullet flying in the air?
Pretty much, yeah. But for me, I still hold myself to those standards, right? So, but I come with all that with me. So I think the intangible benefit of bringing someone that's a veteran to your business, they're coming with proven leadership, whether they were a PFC or a very low level ranking person, or whether they were a corporal or sergeant or officer. They have leadership experience, either being under poor leadership or great leadership, or emulating that leadership. They've seen a ton of it because we had all those change of guard all the time. All you do is get exposed to new people bossing you around, and what you do is you adapt with the best leadership characteristics. You let go of the ones that don't work and bring that with you to the corporate world. Again, you get rid of the ones that no longer work, add some new ones that you're exposed to, and adapt and improvise. I mean, all those things, they come with me every single day.
Right. Yeah, I think, for myself, full disclosure, I wasn't like the model Marine. I like to question a lot of things, and but I did get the foundation of going to boot camp and then having to be in an infantry battalion. And there's a lot that you'll just learn through, going through the experiences. So a lot like just little things I say to myself like every day, like it can always be worse kind of thing, right? Just having like the effort piece, like a lot of things is just effort. You may not be the expert in something, but just putting in the effort, the hard work, that kind of thing, setting goals.
I'll be honest with you. That's what got me through grad school and through my BA was knowing, look, I'm older than most. I'm been to combat. I'm a little bit touched. I got to figure out how to adapt to the civilian thing. And then like going to school and feeling like Billy Madison was super tough to do. But, continuing to like put yourself and humble yourself back into that position to adapt with new circumstances is tough, but it's vital.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because I saw, I know using the term SMEAC makes me an old
I
guy.
I used it yesterday. I use it all the time. Yeah. I use it with my president of my company.
Right. So SMEAC was just on like LinkedIn recently. There was a video on it.
It's about time.
Yeah. And really, because at CISO Share, we're consultants. So not everything is always defined and clear, just like it is in warfare. So we quickly have to orient and adapt, right? So if you don't know what SMEAC is, it's like situation, mission, execution, admin, and communication. It's just a little structure to help orient yourself and do problem solving. But that's something I've carried with me like everywhere I went, because you never know when you go into a meeting like what you're supposed to be, what the goal is. So you just have to figure out. You ask yourself or ask the people in the meeting, what are we even facing? What are we trying to accomplish? And then identifying how you're going to get there and communicate that.
Right. I mean, you have a mission, right? As a security leader, whether you're a consultant or you're a functioning analyst or whatever, no matter, even if you're a security team member, you're still leading security. You're responsible for taking care of the company. You're taking on the responsibility for yourself. So it's a tough role to burden, but you got to equip yourself.
Yeah. And to the point of this podcast, we're talking about veterans and cybersecurity. So if you're like a veteran listening to this, you're wondering like, how the hell do I even get into this, become even remotely successful in something that you don't know anything about. It's like just leaning on those types of things that you've already gone through it. It's just morphing your approach and using those skills like at the foundation. Cause you have a ton of training and you got to lean on what you already know to take that next step.
Right. And you go through those sessions when you're getting promoted in the military, right? You go in front of the board and it's a different kind of board. It's not the board of directors, but it's almost equally as intimidating. And you're going up there and you're trying to get promoted. That's an interview in and of itself. So when you get out, veterans out there, you're looking for a job and you're looking, you've done some pretty cool stuff in the past. Just remember the time you went up for your promotion. Just be that person. Be Sergeant so-and-so, be Corporal so-and-so, go be yourself, go get the job, adapt to the situation, give yourself a break, Give yourself some time, learn your craft, whatever angle you take, whether it's risk, whether it's vulnerability, whether it's architecture, whether it's, accounting. Just adapt to your situation and deal with it, make the best out of it, be passionate, keep trying to get better and network, and try to network with veterans too, because they're going to, like you and I, we have a pretty good relationship.
Right.
And it came through, like you mentioned, Jeff Andrade. And that's the kind of thing, that Mike needed as a business owner, was to bring, for you to get out there, touch bases with someone like that, who touched bases with someone like me. It's a difficult process. It sounds like it's easy to bring vets, but it's not.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's just putting yourself out there. Like, there's so many, for us to even, all three of us to be in this room, like, there's so many dominoes that have to fall. One is the business owner has to take the risk of even hiring somebody.
Right.
It's not like there's just programs out there that like fall into people's laps, to Mike's point earlier. And then it takes having the opportunities and then identifying how you're even going to like use your network, because especially in small businesses, your resources are so limited. It's not like you have a big backing of, this huge recruiting department, or, you're balancing the work with the skill set with, do we have the sales to do it? So there's a lot of things that have to fall in place, but, it's definitely difficult. With what we're talking about on using the skills that you learn in the Marine Corps, do you think that you leverage those enough, or you identified really what those were when you're out looking for jobs? So for instance, a lot of guys I talk to, they'll say, I don't even know how I would fit into this job. Like, they'll read a job description, right? And they already take themselves out of the fight.
Yeah, I know a guy that's already got a job. I tried to get him hired for me,
right,
and didn't have the guts because that very comment,
right,
which is unfounded.
So what are your recommendations? Like, for you're an outside. I was already in InfoSec, quasi InfoSec, and IT, so I was more easily able to BS my way through some of that. But for yourself, how did you identify what your strengths were, and then applying those to the opportunity?
Like we talked about earlier, everybody's different in the military. It depends on what kind of job you have, right? I so happen to have a combat leadership job. So when we spoke about risk management on a day-to-day basis, that's basically what it boils down to. First and foremost, it's operations management, but when stuff gets tough, and then it becomes risk management very quickly. And then you really soon realize that risk management is far more important than your operations management, to be quite honest, right? So that was a revelation I had in the military, was like, look, you got to manage your risk. You got to accept risk. You got to take risk. You got to survive. You got to adapt, which is, I'm being honest. I mean, I took a hell of a lot of risk, but I brought everybody home alive, and that was my primary, my goal. So when I got back, my point is, Adam, that I looked at my resume and I said, well, how am I going to turn this into something that's civilian acceptable? And I was like, it says machine gun. It says, grenade launcher. It says sniper.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to want to hire me other than like a 3-letter agency? And like we mentioned earlier, all that glitters isn't gold anyway on that other side of the fence. So how do I adapt my resume? I went through, I don't know, probably like 50, 60 revisions. People throwing my resume at people I met through business networking. Hey, can you just take a look at this? Can you take it? What do you think? What do you think? Started looking at the lingo. I took a couple like Myers-Briggs tests and, throughout my life. And I started looking at that data, right? And I started looking at that data and saying, okay, well, that actually makes sense. That is who I am. Let me put that personality trait on my resume, such as quiet diligence, because quite frankly, that's one of my favorite characteristics of myself. And I realized that's one of my strengths. So I'm going to put that down. Then I started looking at all my jobs and I said, okay, look, what's the common element and thread between all these disparate looking positions? Risk, 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 quality control, quality control, quality control, which makes its way to risk, believe it or not. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep putting that word in every one of these job descriptions that I've had. Risk management, risk analysis, risk such and such. And that thread followed its way ultimately through up to intelligence and up to cyber, where it's used every single day.
Do you think there's any difference in somebody that comes from like a motor transportation or like bulk fuel background, being in the military, and yourself, like being able to get into cybersecurity?
They probably have an easier job than me, to be honest with you. Opportunity, I would say. And I don't really mean to be that in a rude way, but a lot of combat veterans in particular, and I mean combat not as a combat who's experienced combat, but I mean as an infantry operator who was doing nothing but operating every single day, not sleeping 4 days in a row. Like, I mean, it was tough. So those people have a much tougher time transitioning. I'll be honest. They get to the bottle quicker. They get to drugs faster. They get to, fast women. They get to fast times. And you and I both have lost quite a few friends already, right?
Yeah.
I mean, almost one per year on average,
Right.
for me at least.
Yep.
So that sucks. So is it easier for them? I mean, for that reason, yes, but no, because everybody's equal when they come out. And it just depends on who you are.
Yeah, that's kind of my point, is that like a lot of guys, well, at least again, we're both speaking from the Marine Corps perspective, where like everybody is, everybody literally is a rifleman. Like that's what you're taught, right? So
Sure.
Foundationally, yeah,
Sure.
yeah, you're an 03, so
Yeah.
not the quite the rifleman you were,
Right.
but the foundation of what the Marine Corps teaches you is how to shoot, move, and communicate, which is basically execution, right? And how to quickly learn something and deal with the unknown, and just push through adversity
And have confidence.
right. So some of the guidance I got was just fall back on those. I went through a lot of the same trials and tribulations as far as trying to find the job or where I fit in, but I was also taught by somebody to just brag, like know what you're actually good at, and be like, because a lot of times the person on the other side of the table doesn't know what your military experience actually means or how to translate it. So you have to break it down for people and really express what it means, tell them what it means, tell your story,
right.
and I think that's kind of one of the missing pieces. The guys are like actually afraid to talk about things, or they don't know how to tell their story and translate it to the business world, which you need a lot of mentoring.
To be honest with you, I think no matter, and I'm talking about from a combat vet perspective, I don't know what it's to be like, honestly, as a quote unquote regular veteran. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but you know what I mean? Like
Non-combat vet.
Yeah, non-combat.
Right.
Someone who really didn't go through
Garrison,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so they have a different experience, and they're all just as capable and smart, probably smarter and more capable because they haven't gone through all the stress, trauma, and that kind of stuff. But, at the end of the day, it's about coming from the military. It's the same kind of people who go in are the same kind of people who come out. There's about 5 types of people that go in there. And I don't want to get into specifics, but there's some good types and there's some not so good types, right?
Right.
And when they come out, it's about what you've done with your time with yourself, almost like a prisoner.
Right.
I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but what did you do to transition yourself and prepare yourself for the next stage of your life while you were in? That's your responsibility, right? So you've committed to that, and then coming out is, okay, well, what are you going to do now? Are you going to be that same scumbag that you were before you came in? While you were in, did you change or not? Because if you didn't change, the military president wants you, and if you're going to get out because you want to get out, you're still going to be a scumbag.
Right.
And that's the ultimate truth. So there's a couple of factors. It's like, who were you while you were in? Did you decide to change? Did you make a profound difference in your life and your lifestyle choices, enough so that you're different now? Or did you decide to just go through the motions and come out as the same person you were?
Right.
Yeah, maybe you might be a bit more hardened and a bit more experienced in some very unfortunate things to have to experience, but are you a different person? Did you grow? And when you get out, that's really what it holds people back, is they didn't grow. So they go straight to the bottle, or that my time was more difficult than yours. It's a one-up contest. But that's not how it's supposed to. It can't be like that. As a vet, so you got to realize it's not about I had a harder time than you. I saw more death than you. I killed more people than you. It's not about that. It's about, hey, we're both on the outside now. Things are different, way different, to be honest, right? And no one prepared us. And whatever, we decided to do this. This is our choice to go in. It's our choice to get out. But we got to band together. And I don't care if you're in the Air Force and you were a cook, and you're talking to a special forces guy and in the Army. I don't give a damn. You guys got to get along. And I got guys on my team that are what we call pogues, people other than grunts that in the military I would just laugh at. But I love them. And I love being a pogue now. I love sitting in a seat and having a computer. I mean, those are some benefits that you get as opposed to being in the movies and the TV and running and gunning and pulling the trigger and diving through rocks and getting shot at and blown up and dirty and muddy and bloody and freezing. And yeah, so it's just, it's like I said, it really depends on who you decide to become. because you have those choices, right? You go through the military experience, combat or not, you're going to get put in positions you don't want to be in. And what do you do about that as a character for yourself? Do you adapt? Do you grow? Or do you succumb and become even more of a scumbag when you get out? That's what's going to happen. You're going to feed off that energy. And every one of us has to kind of go through a transition, combat experience or not.
Yeah.
And there is no boot camp to pull you back out. There's no reverse indoctrination process, right? There is no sponsorship. The state doesn't sponsor you. The military doesn't sponsor that. None of that stuff. So that's up to you and your family. And if you don't have a family, you're kind of stuck when you get out. It's really, really, I mean, I was in a position similar to that. Very difficult when you don't have a support system. And even more so when you're drinking, because then you really feel like, you know what happens. You just start losing touch with reality and stuff.
Yeah. So I know, like, at least at our company at CISO Share, we've, CISO Share builds programs for companies to help them, figure out what security is, how to measure against that, how to communicate it, and then how to execute upon those decisions. But what we also are is a support system for, helping people find their way in this field, because this field's pretty vast, right? There's so many
there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. What are the things that you took away, for better and worse, right, your time at CISO Share, and like how are you like leveraging those now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of intangible stuff I learned from Mike, a lot of guidance that, I was provided from you that really helped shape kind of a lot of the way I decide to do things now. As I mentioned earlier, reporting to the board of directors is a little bit different from reporting to some generals or even some sergeants or whatever the case might be. Fundamentally, ultimately, it comes down to, providing your client or your business that you're working for, right, with honest information, and so they can make an informed decision and supporting that decision. That's really what I took away at the end of the day. I use it every single day. Look, my job, right, is to help manage risk. Am I the chief risk officer? No. Right now, I'm the chief information security officer. But what do? All day long, I manage risk. So what's my responsibility? Well, to inform my higher ups, like a military, right, what's going on so they can be aware of the situation and the consequences of not taking action. And then I help support that decision until I'm then now the person that's the chief risk officer making those decisions.
So what was your understanding, like when you interviewed, I know you talked a lot about vulnerability management, and I thought that was interesting because people usually don't lead with that.
Sure.
But you're also had experience with vulnerability management in a physical fight. But, with what was your understanding of cybersecurity then, and as opposed to how it's matured and what it is now?
Sure. I mean, quite frankly, I remember talking to Mike one night. The sun was going down, and I said to Mike, like, hey, is network security the same thing as cybersecurity? It's a really innocent question, but ignorant is at the same time. And I've come to learn that there's a lot of things that, as an outsider, a pure outsider, sound like they should be the same thing, like information security and data protection. Sounds synonymous to me, but it's not, right? We know that, but there's a lot of granularity into that definition that as an outsider, you're not aware of. So a lot of things, another thing like vulnerability management, right? To your point, I was under the impression, or at least my concept of reality in that regard was, leveraging my adversary's vulnerabilities, finding their critical vulnerabilities and exploiting that, right? I mean, basically that's what a bad actor does anyway, but that's what I was thinking as a combat leader. So, I mean, it was very similar. And all that changed was, okay, now I'm starting to understand what's the difference between networking, and everything else. What's the difference between database management, configuration management, and, all the asset management, all these different silos, so to speak, that all come together under this huge umbrella of security programs. And so as an outsider, all I really knew was, look, some guys are just trying to hack things, right? And what that means to me is they're just stealing your password probably, and they're trying to find a way into your computer using binary code. That's what I used to think. And they're probably good at it. They probably know something I don't know. But now I know all you got to do is buy some script, so that somebody else built it, and it's super cheap, and you go to the dark web, and it's like it's super easy to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of things like that were used to be esoteric are now exoteric, and now I understand them far more intimately, and still they're very kind of out there. Some of these concepts are out there. I'm working on a thing now called identity as a service in finance, trying to leverage data privacy and spin it, instead of being an expense, turn it into revenue. It's a really weird, awesome place to be, because you're cutting edge in the world. We're in a 21st century now, and if you're not adapting that as a business owner or as a business person, you're going to die, right? And your executive management team has to do that too. And as the baby boomers move out, you're going to have this whole wave of new people or these generations that are digital. Everything's going to be digital. You're going to see automation take over. We've spoken about this. And what's going to happen, you're still going to need 30% of the people to manage those machines. Who are you going to get? Well, let me guess. The people that have been working with those machines and understand their security flaws, right? So this is a good job security for veterans too.
Right.
This is where you want to be, to be honest. This is where you can take your skills and your lingo from the military, put it into real world pragmatic practice, right? And leverage it, have confidence, put yourself out there like you do on patrol. You expose yourself to situations, and you deal with the circumstances. You get shot at, you shoot back.
Right. Yeah, I think, there's that's kind of the thing that I look at is, what have I actually learned? I mean, I've learned so much, but what I think when it boils down to it, when you go into like a smaller business, especially a consultancy, you went through the whole life cycle of like everything you've learned and how it's going forward. But when I slow down and think about it, it's like I really learned how to break down like tough concepts so far into like simple concepts to either communicate them out or to help understand what needs to be done next, how to plan. Right. Those are like, that's like the simplest piece. I remember learning the difference between a policy process and a standard, which in cybersecurity, a lot of that stuff blends together. But in the military, what a lot of veterans don't know is you deal with processes, policy, and standard all the time.
Every day.
Right? Height and weight standards, policy for, drinking and driving, the process for
disassembling your weapon.
What exactly? So what I learned is that you have to take these complex processes or complex concepts in cybersecurity and assimilate them to things that you already know.
Well, I'll take it a step further too, because you and I were kind of both in the era of counterterrorism.
Yep.
Right, where you're having to deal with like abstract warfare concepts, the enemy that blends within the crowd, which is very similar to cybersecurity. You're having people that it could be anybody that's attacking you. It could be 12-year-old Susie. You know what I mean? And that kind of perspective, as opposed to traditional warfare, where you maybe perhaps thought of like line fighting and stuff like that.
Right.
Has helped us, probably you and I, who's actually had to been in combat and adapt to situations that were never planned for, no matter how much you rehearse for, no matter how many books you read on strategy and tactics. Every situation dictates what you're supposed to do next. And you have to make it a risk-based decision, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about as an operator in order to survive and bring your troops back alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I was brought up in the intelligence field on Russian doctrine. So, which was part of the problem with 9/11 is we were fighting old enemies. But, for anybody in the last 10 to 15 years that's been in the service, like they have this abstract warfare as you were talking about, but you don't know what your enemy is. And that's the same thing in cybersecurity. You're trying to put together, like, you don't know where you're getting attacked from. You don't know how or why, but you have to do like almost like a link analysis, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many pieces that go into that, but
you know what I do, to your point earlier about like trying to illustrate thought? It's kind of like when we did those tabletop exercises where you would do your terrain model, right?
Yeah, sand tables.
Your sand table, you plan out your attack, you plan out your defense, you take your little stick figures or whatever. And even as a combat operator in theater, you get into a circle and draw a thing on the ground. And like I still do that. I go to my desk and I've seen Mike do that. Going to his desk, taking a piece of paper, blank piece of paper out and just going for it. Like 8 pieces of paper, throwing them around and just figuring out what looks best and then expanding on that model.
Those are all doodles.
Right, and then making it more easily communicated, because I do that all the time now. As a prior consultant, all those skills I've taken with me, drawing diagrams, flow charts, and not just flow charts, but proper diagrams to really illustrate value chain and value proposition. Those are things that are really tough to do, but as an operator and drawing those terrain models, believe it or not, it's like it comes more naturally. So there's a lot of value and there's a lot of opportunity for veterans no matter what you did. I mean, you could, like I said, you could have been a cook, but you probably did your PT with everybody else. You probably shot your rifle with everybody else. You had to follow your standard operating procedures. You had to follow your rules of engagement. You had to do whatever you had to do, take orders, and at some point probably give orders even though you didn't want to give that particular order.
Right.
There's a lot of experience in management that you get, even at the lower echelons in the military, that I think most business owners don't recognize. And I see a lot of business owners and CEOs kind of, a lot, not all. I've got a great one, by the way. He's grad, but a lot of them really think of military people as drones or people who just take orders.
Right.
Like, oh, and I never thought that would actually be true. I heard that like cliche when I was in the Corps, but when I got out, I really saw people like, oh no, they're just, all they do is take orders and push buttons. Well, no, BS. These are the people saving your rear end that we're not playing video games. I had a guy the other day tell me like, all you guys do down in IT is play video games. I was like, well, actually, if it wasn't for us, this business wouldn't exist. Plain and simple, I mean, So there's a lot of value in what you do. You serve a purpose, not just to like your business or to your boss, but to the economy. Even if you're not in intelligence or you're working for the government, if you're working in the private sector, you're still contributing. Everybody needs to protect at least I would like to help protect people's data, right? I'm a person who gives a damn about people's privacy, for better or for worse, and I give a damn about their vulnerabilities. Whether that's at their home and then get broken into physically, or whether that's at their home on their computer and they get broken into. Like, there's still hardcore consequences to not educating people as much as you can without being overburdening. And I found a good spot.
Right.
I think there's a lot of good places for veterans. There's free education. There's free training. Yeah, it's kind of low budget, but you know what? I took it. And here I am.
Yep.
It helped me bridge the gaps. I did my own research. Like I said, read NIST cover to cover, ISO cover to cover, and that's really where it all comes down to. All of it comes down to that. And so it's doable. My point is it's doable. You got to have confidence. You got to believe in yourself. You got to step out of your comfort zone. You got to go for an interview. You got to put in the work. You got to be humble, and you got to take risk.
Yep.
And you did all that stuff in the military, so why not do it as a civilian?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't just...
It's your second enlistment.
Yeah. You got to start over. Yeah. What I was actually thinking about this, it kind of might be funny to talk about. Like, what can you think of a project? You don't got to go into clients or names, but what, like, a project that you learned a lot, or like there's just like some light that went off in your mind, in the consulting side, or it could be in what you've done, as in your new roles.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could definitely do the second one, but the first one I think is an interesting question, right? Yeah, a lot of times I was a project manager to a certain extent, but leading like the only person there on the team. So you're basically the security leader at that point, in uncharted waters. And I had a difficult client in Los Angeles, in the healthcare kind of industry. And, I wound up kind of speaking to the board at some point. And that was my first experience doing so. It was exciting. It was really exciting, but I was with people. I think you were even there, and probably even Mike, but I'd been in that position before with you guys speaking, and then that was my turn kind of to speak, and felt so natural, but it was like, this is where I belong. This is truly where I belong. Like, I'm capable of doing this job. Like, I can do this. I don't have 10, 15 years of InfoSec background. I don't have an advanced degree in information security or computer science, but you know what I can do? I can communicate extremely well. I can articulate value. I can recognize abstract concepts. I can help manage risk. I can help inform my stakeholders. All those things just came out all at once.
So if you're in cybersecurity, like if you were talking to somebody that's listening that's either a consultant or trying to grow in cybersecurity in general, like what are the conditions that were set that made you successful? I'll
tell you right now. I tell everybody this: get as much exposure as you can to as many domains or families, whatever you want to call it, in the framework as possible. You might be really interested in, pushing buttons and watching video game sparks fly and vulnerability management and stuff, or managing alerts. Like, that could be your thing. And you love binary kind of concepts, but you know what? Get out of that box. Get exposed to risk management. See what it's like to deal with an auditor. Those are the things that you really don't, that you, as a consultant, that you learn that are invaluable as an employee, knowing how to deal with the auditors.
So within that project you were talking about that you
Sure.
you like what were the things that made you successful in that though? Like, was it somebody explaining all that stuff to you?
No, I think it was just a matter of time and confidence, reassurance that, I'm with professionals and I've watched them do this and it works. And I'm with the guy who wrote a couple books on the thing. I'm with the dude who was doing this in the military and identifies with me and trusts me and believes in my capability, right? It was those kinds of that epiphany of like, this will work. This will work. Like, I can do this. And that's what I mean as a profound experience that I could take with me is from the military to this. I had a lot of different jobs, right? So, but that was a time where I was like, this is what I'm good at.
Right.
And so I've taken all those skills with me. Difficult client, had a lot of cool experiences, definitely for sure. But you asked about like when the light bulb go off.
Right.
Now as an employee, it's a different scenario. And I think I've may alluded this to you some other time in the past. As a consultant, you're like watching this huge river go down, I don't know, the land, right? It's just crushing river and it's got white rapids at some parts and some parts it's pretty mellow. And you're like, you can kind of walk up and down the land and choose when you want to cross the river, build a bridge or take a jump or go for a swim or whatever. But as an employee, you're in that river on a little raft. You know what I mean? You're on that thing for better or for worse.
Right.
And you're in that boat, you're in that relationship. And you better be navigating that thing properly because the consequences are, you're not just going to hop out and get back on land and like find a new job. Like it's different. So the risks that you take have more severe consequences.
Right.
To be honest with you, as a consultant, quite frankly, you can like, look, you don't take my advice, F you.
Right.
You don't have to tell them that, but in your mind, you're like, okay, no worries, dude. Hey, you paid for me. I did what you asked for, and let's go different ways. But as an employee, it's you're in. It's like, look, I told you what to do, and they may even politic you and say, look, I don't give a damn. You never told me that. Well, yeah, I did. Well, no, you didn't.
Right.
And it goes back and forth. So you really have to use your consulting skills to negotiate that landscape, know how to deal with different politics, because I'm sure as you and Mike know and can attest to, at the C-suite level, you're dealing with some pretty big egos and some personalities that are very high charged and high voltage and extremely intelligent. And you really have to do that dance of knowing more so about how people's vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. That's where your social engineering stuff comes in handy.
Right.
And quite frankly, I'll admit that that's what it is. You can say consulting, whatever. If you're selling your social engineering, yeah, okay, maybe it's for malicious activity or intent. That's your definition.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you're social engineering a situation for a better reason, right?
Yeah.
So
and that's like a lot of what I know when we have new consultants we work on. A lot of times I couldn't care less about whether they know the difference between a threat or vulnerability. What I'm trying to do is get them to talk about their soft skills. A lot of times it's listening, like just sit there and listen, because as a consultant, and it's a lot of times in cybersecurity, people are frustrated and they just want to be heard or they want to get it out.
That's just life in general, dude.
Right?
But yeah.
But it's the same stuff. Sure. It's like dating, right?
Yeah,
like you ask questions and you let the other person talk and all that. And and also being comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's a lot of what leads to success too, because you have to we always talk about putting yourself out there and taking the risk. But I know a lot of the experiences I've had over the years, working not only in CISO Share, but other businesses with our CEO, it's being comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. Right. And that's
you get a good dose of that in the military, right?
Exactly. So, that's the point of the podcast is that in basic training or boot camp in the Marine Corps, that's all it is, right? They make you uncomfortable and you break you down, but relying on that, I've just relied on that for the last 18 years.
I mean, for better or for worse, you kind of, that stays with you. I think definitely stayed with me. I mean,
I don't think it's for everybody though, right?
Definitely. Well, I mean, look,
being uncomfortable, people like to be comfortable.
That's a natural inclination, but I do think it's for everybody, because people do need to get pushed out of their comfort zone, because they don't. They wind up some snotty little brat, and you know what I mean? And you have to deal with that person at Whole Foods or whatever, or whatever the case may be.
But what we're trying to get at is, how do you create success for somebody that wants to get into cybersecurity, right? And it's not just a business creating success or people in that business. It's also the veteran that needs to help create the situation or the climate for success, right? And being comfortable being uncomfortable is a big part of that, because most people did not grow up in cybersecurity. Even cybersecurity veterans didn't. Like, cybersecurity veterans a lot of times were network admins and IT people, right? And then they kind of migrated over to it, or they were in other leadership positions and they've had that role either offered to them or forced upon them. But we're growing up now where we're actually building cybersecurity people.
Yeah, it's gonna be different,
right?
Different situation.
But if you're coming out of the military, like we have a guy, you know, at CISO Share, he was in supply. Like, there's no IT security in supply, you know, or cybersecurity. Like, so he's definitely swimming in a land of the unknown. But, you know, so those that's some of the stuff that I've definitely learned.
So one of the last things I kind of want to bring up with you guys is, what advice would you give people who either want to get into cybersecurity or are transitioning out of, you know, the military?
Well, they're two different things. So,
Yeah.
I mean, definitely two different things. So I'll start with the latter because I think it's more important. I don't mean to hijack the podcast, but I think people's life is more important than having a job.
Yeah, sure.
Because a lot of people kill themselves that don't need to die, to be honest with you. So getting out, what I think about transitioning, you know, you got to have a plan way before you get out. I mean, I thought I had plan F, A, B, C, D, E, F. I mean, I was going all the way. You know, as an operator, I had contingency plans for everything. I had 50 grand saved in the bank. You know, I was on my way to a college degree. I knew I wanted to get an MBA after that. I thought I was going to get into banking and finance and asset management and hedge funds and all kinds of stuff. Really, you know, that's really what my goal was at the time. And I really didn't know what was out there for me. So, you know, you got to have a plan no matter what, just like you do in the military. Even if you have a small plan in the military to restock your supply of food for that day, it's the same concept when you have to have your plan to transition yourself out. Because you know what? No one's going to help you. No veteran service is actually, believe it or not, I've been through them all, or damn near all. I feel like they think they know how to help you, but they don't. You need to figure yourself out first. And the only way you're going to figure yourself out is if you have a financial cushion or a support system from when you get out. And slow down your drinking. Whatever you're drinking now, just stop slowing down, you know, and keep exercising and all that kind of. I know it sounds lame, but I do care about people getting out and people taking their life because it's been happening a little bit too much for me, definitely. So that's a big thing there. And then I would say education is huge. Get into tech. I don't care if it's cyber. I don't care if it's, you know, I don't know, infrastructure, IT, hardware. Get into tech to some way, shape, or form, because in 30 years from now, you know, there's so many jobs that are going to get displaced from technology. It's not even funny. So that'll be my second thing. And then third thing is, don't be too hard on yourself. If you're transitioning from the military, you may have been Rambo or you may not have been Rambo. You know, you may be trying to start all over again. Maybe you came out as a huge high flying leader like me, or maybe you came out as somebody who really didn't feel like they accomplished much, and this is your opportunity, both of you, to make a new start for your life. So, you know, like I said, this is your second enlistment or your second go around, right? This is your another tour of duty, and it doesn't stop. It's just because you're not getting shot, it doesn't mean people aren't taking bullets and shooting at you too with their words, because they are. They cut you down, you know, and they don't even mean to, and your parents do it. All kinds of things you're not really dealing with when you're in the military. So when you get out, have a plan, take action, adapt to the situation, you know, and improvise. And as far as for cybersecurity, you want to get into cyber, start taking all the courses that are probably available to you while you're in the military right now. I bet you there's a ton of stuff that's free right now that you could do. I bet you could probably lap move into cyber if you wanted to, because they're hurting bad for people right now. I've even heard they're giving out big old bonuses, or, you know, signing bonuses for people who are going into cyber. And I would recommend going into the Air Force, quite frankly, if you're in cyber or you want to be in cyber as my primary. But it just depends on who you are and what you really want to do at the end of the day. But warfare is changing. So you got to decide, do you want to be a warfighter and fight in combat, you know, on the ground, taking bullets and shooting things and blowing things up? Or do you want to be a drone operator, dropping bombs on people and think you're not going to get brain, you know, trauma from that? You're wrong. You know, whatever you think you're playing video games, that's not, you're still fighting a war. You got to decide what angle you want to take. Do you want to be a leader when you get out? Are you a people person? Are you an entrepreneur? Then go kind of get a leadership position. If you want to get out and you want to be a businessman or whatever, and you're really analytical, go for cyber. Go for information assurance. Go for intelligence. Go for something that's going to do you some good when you get out. And if you're still in, try to lat move, like I said, as much as possible. Up your security clearance. You know what, Adam? That's probably my biggest thing. If you're still in and you're not sure what you want to do and you have a security clearance, even if it's a secret clearance or whatever, keep that thing active. Use it on your resume when you get out in very specific situations with, certain employers, but leverage that on your way into cyber. That's the best way to get, to be honest with you, that's the best way to get in.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot to build on with what you just said. What you said about a plan. So getting out of the Marine Corps or getting out of the service in general, you have to have a plan, right? And so with a plan, I think you need to have a vision for what you want, whether that's, a little, a lot, it's geographic, it's monetary, whatever that is, and set yourself goals, like attainable goals, and I think that's kind of always been one of my personal strengths is within my life. I knew where I wanted to be and when I wanted to get there. Now, I didn't always get there when I wanted to get there,
sure.
And I sure as hell didn't know how I was going to get there, but at least if you have a light to walk towards, you can go towards it. Like one thing I heard from another mentor of mine was, if you don't know where you want to go, then you don't have to worry about getting there. And that kind of sucks, because then you just get stuck in the,
right.
like in the downward
spiral. If you don't make a challenge for yourself, life will make a challenge for you.
Yep.
And you want to make sure you're steering that ship.
Right. So if you want to own a big house or have a bunch of cars, like you need to understand like how you're going to make that work. But the other piece is know yourself. Like, we talk about the leadership traits and all that. And, if you know yourself, then you know how to build on your strengths, but you also know what weaknesses you have to compensate for. At the same time, I wouldn't spend a ton of time focusing on your weaknesses, because a lot of times I know for myself, the things that I suck at, or sucked at 5 years ago, I probably still suck at. I'm not going to be a coder. There's just things that they're not in me. I can learn anything. I know I can learn anything if I apply myself and spend as much time as I want on it, but it doesn't make me happy. So I forget about it. I just kind of push it to the side and focus on the things that I enjoy and my strengths. Also getting out, limit your expenses. I see all these guys get out, or they got married while they're in, they buy a house, they buy a car, they buy all this stuff. It just limits your ability to take risks. So the next thing I would say, which is part personal and part professional, is take risks. Like when you're young and you get out of the service, a lot of these guys are getting out at 22, 23 years old, right? You don't even, your body hasn't even developed yet. Yeah. You're not even a man. So take risks, go out and try something. You have nothing to lose, right? And the biggest thing you have on your side is time. So, go out there and try different jobs. If somebody accepts, or the next thing is if somebody offers you an opportunity, take it. You don't know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I told myself, I was jokingly with a friend when I was getting out, if someone offered me the position for the CEO of Goldman Sachs, I'll take it. They'll fire me the next day. But you know what? I'm going to take the job because I'm taking that risk. I'll take on the stress temporarily because I know the reward is likely worth the time and sacrifice.
Right. But I mean, even if you don't have a job and your next door neighbor offers you a job emptying porta potties, that's going to suck. But you know what? It's easier oftentimes to find a job when you have a job, and at least you have an income.
Without a doubt, yeah.
And you're meeting people, and you have skills, and your resume is being built. So just take risks, accept opportunities, move around, and then
sell yourself.
Well, yeah, sell yourself, but do it in a smart way, do it in a focused way.
That's what I mean.
And use your GI Bill. A lot of guys, they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't even know what I want to get a degree in. Go get a degree in business or communication or psychology or whatever. I feel like most of us don't even use our degrees for the core program that we were actually studying, right? So it's all about showing that you can complete something, you can focus on it, you know how to write a complete sentence, that stuff.
That goes a long way.
Right. I know at least in my time working in CISO share in previous businesses with Mike, we've hired people from all backgrounds, as I say, all makes and models. So there have been people like that have come from other countries, other areas of the United States, all different backgrounds, all different skill sets. It's all the willingness to work hard and kind of figure it out and work as a team. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I will say that don't spend too much time working on your weakness. I did that. I'll admit I spent too much time doing that because I thought the balance wasn't right. Like I thought I was really good at some things, and hey, why not get better at the things I'm not as good at? And I really gave a concerted effort philosophically and otherwise for about a good 3-4 years, only to give up, realizing that actually in the civilian sector, and I'm not going to say civilian sector, but like for whatever reason it feels like that's the case, you're better off relying on your strengths. Because maybe in the military you've got other people that you can count on a lot more reliably to kind of pull you through the endeavor, but as a civilian you don't. You're on your own. So know what you're good at, get really good at it. And I think even in the 21st century, hyper specialization in industries is still going to continue to, exponentially increase. So get really good at what you do, like really good, and be the best person in the weirdest thing that you've ever heard of. And you'll start getting paid. You'll start getting offers. You'll start finding new work. You'll start finding new opportunities and avenues for growth. So expand your comfort zone. That's really the key thing to do.
Yep. Cool.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of True Colors of Cybersecurity. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure to subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss out on future episodes. And make sure to leave us a rating. Have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future episodes? Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter @CISOShare. We'll see you next time.